I believe there are things that make good sculptures and there are good paintings. Good two-dimensional work doesn't necessarily make good three-dimensional work. Uh, it'd be insane to make a sculpture like some of my paintings slash watercolors, where you have, say, you would have some of the dogs that have these speech lines coming out of their mouth. I mean, it'd be insane and stupid to make a sculpture of that because it's not a good sculpture. It's not a good sculpture to have, a 10-foot high cement dog with big pieces of rebar coming out of their mouth, folding, drawing lines into the air. For me, a good sculpture is what Michelangelo said, and the Egyptians knew this very well. A good sculpture is a sculpture that you can roll off a cliff, and it's in one piece when it hits the bottom. In other words, it's very plastic, meaning it evolves from one form, it has one form, and everything refers back to everything else. The hands refer back to the body, the head refers back to the body, and everything is contained into one form. Sculpture's about form, painting's about line, color, and composition. But some of the same kind of things are true in painting that are true in sculpture. For instance, you'll notice most of my lines that, for instance, like we were talking, come out of the dog's mouth, they curl up and refer back to the original animal. And many of my signatures in my paintings always refer back to the center. The center is very important for me. The big central image, that was something in abstract expressionism that was a hot topic. That was like the grand big central image. It was like all Pollock's paintings. They refer back to the center. His drips always refer back to the center. And in any good composition, there's the X, and the focal point of the X is the center. There's the X, the pyramid, the triangle. So they're like related in that. I'd say whenever I work on my sculpture, I'm not working on two-dimensional work, and vice versa. I'll take little breaks, couple weeks on each. So they're always imbalanced. Sculpture is a little bit ahead of my painting, and it usually always is, because before I seriously began making two-dimensional work, I just sculpted my heart out for years. And so my two-dimensional work's always been a little bit behind, but it's catching up. As far as immediacy and honesty and, what you were kind of getting at, most of the ideas for my sculpture come from very quick sketches. The central idea of, say the idea is, two figures face to face and both their faces together make up one face, a very quick sketch on your phone book or on a matchbook cover on a napkin. It's the idea, and then the execution of it can take a long time to realize that in 3 dimensions. With which the pen or brush is moving. And for the last 3 or 4 years, I've tried to get that real instant kind of signature, and still have depth and still have color, and just have it all come together and work as one. And it sounds easy, but it was really hard to do. And I'm not saying I completely have pegged it yet. This is a particular favorite. See, I started out with a real slight pencil sketch of the figure beforehand, and then 1 or 2 of watercolor and inks. Are these all done with the same type of pen? Yeah, a bamboo pen. Very simple, Japanese kind of in style, Japanese calligraphy. These are just a new idea I got onto a couple days and tried to boil the figure down to this real minimalist kind of black line solution. Remember too to set some things aside for close-ups later. Yeah, these are definitely a little bit more cerebral approach, stuff like this and this. It really just, it takes a lot of instant fun out of it. And I think it makes it, actually these figures are more, they're more tragic, I think, than this almost looks like an illustration out of a child's book.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And here I see some recurring figures.
Yeah. I mean, there's
Forms.
there's only a few good ideas out there, really. I mean, at any given time when you're working.
In your artwork and in anybody's artwork?
Pardon?
In your work or in anybody's?
In mine, for what I want. I mean, and if you find a good idea, I do, and it's the only way I know of working, is that you have to just beat it over and over again until you get the perfect one.
And keep exploring it until you can.
Right, like with this was the other one that I like a lot. This thing, the girl holding a doll. And like I said, there's another variation of that, but you make 30 of them, you're gonna find a solution that is better than the rest, and that leads to other things. And again, this is a little bit closer to what I'm doing now. A couple of years ago, and I knew I liked these, but I couldn't get them to work without the skulls. They would, but they just didn't have the same power. The kind of the empty skull-like head, and I hated it. And I still hate drawing skulls. But
What about those characters that crop up there? Those little characters floating in the air. That's the first we've seen of those, but I know that they figure in heavily.
right, I mean that's just that balances out the composition. That just adds a whole new dimension to it. Adding these kind of figures with a little bit of implied depth to them with these real flat sketches. I mean, even he has implied depth to his rib cage and his fuselage area.
What year was this?
This was 98.
So about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah. As I've been after trying to get this to work big for even longer than that. Like within 2 years before that, I even was charmed with the idea of making such really quick, instant work.
And what were you doing back then? Pencil sketches, ink, paint?
No paint, but very, very bad. I mean, they just didn't work.
And was it always watercolor or was it oil or acrylic?
A lot of it was oil and acrylic. But the work on paper, I don't know, it has a quality to it. The translucence of the paper, once the ink lays on the paper like this, it glows, when you have watercolor ink flying on the paper. There's some translucent kind of gem-like quality just about how the watercolor sits on the paper. And it's not the same in oil painting. I mean, it is if you paint this thin.
The skewered witch.
Yeah.
It seems like with paper with paper and watercolor, there's an element of unpredictability to it. With the way that the paint will kind of dissolve and spread on the paper.
That's part of it. It's easier to get this atmospheric kind of look to it. Something I've kind of abandoned now.
And another thing that I was thinking when you were telling me about what you're doing right now, an idea occurred to me, or an aspect that occurred to me, is that you kind of are playing off the unpredictability of it, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I was trying to describe what you're doing to my friends last night, and 2 of them who went to art school and just, are designers and whatever now, and I was saying, if my memory serves me, what you're doing is you got this big canvas that's stretched on the floor, and then you will pour some watercolor onto the canvas, and then ink around it. And what is that the element of unpredictability or spontaneity? That you had this form down, and how much care do you put in when you put that initial watercolor down on the canvas?
It varies with everything. It varies with the mood I'm in. It varies with if I have kind of a little bit of a preconceived idea of what I'm going to make. I'll really be a little bit more careful, but you'll see. I mean, when we go down there, you'll see the unpredictable part of it. Every degree of wetness of the watercolor will take the black line differently. Like if I waited a long time to go in with the black line after this scene right here in the background was initially made. you know, it's not bleeding at all. It's pretty crystalline clear and choppy. You know, a little bit of this, that's a little bit of the exception right there. This, on the other hand, this black was laid on here with it's still pretty wet.
But with it seems like with the paper and with watercolor, it's nice because when you get some of that bleed and you don't know exactly what you're going to get.
Right.
Whereas with oil and canvas, it's very painstaking. You almost know exactly what you're going to get.
Right.
Are these all from the same period?
No, these are really early. These are like 95, 96. Mm-hmm. It's just complete. Let's see here. Yeah. Is that in your range there?
No. But it would be if you put it by your knee. Yeah.
Actually, some of these are ones that I made when I got back. I think this is 99. Here's one of my personal favorites of this period. It just has a lot of depth to it. The landscape, the sky is so rich, but it's not painstakingly painted. It just kind of happened.
A lot of bleed.
Yeah.
I like that one that's on top there.
This, I made this for Heather when I first met her. She has the other one that's better than this. Yeah, and these were the ones that after working for probably, got into when I work here in Italy to try to come up with new ideas and stuff. I mean, that's all I do. I mean, from time I get up 8 in the morning until 8, 10 at night, it's like I'll go through $100 of paper, you know, in a couple days. And these were the final results of going through all that paper.
And some of the most successful experiments?
Yeah, they just kind of came together enough. And, you know, the composition just worked on some of these that these work. This style of drawing has been with me as far as I can remember since 1992. In Alaska, when I was crab fishing, I made a lot of charcoal drawings, and there were elements of those in these. And it slowly evolved, just the style, the floating X's in the air, the quick kind of pumpkin-headed faced figure slowly evolved over the years and kind of became something different. And I can't say that, I mean, sure, the compositions in some of these are new. Some of the ideas are new. But it's pretty much the same vein. And my big quest, my big point of resolve was I could always make these images this big. And I can make them this big and they work on paper and they're great compositions and they're a great final drawing or sketch, but could never, ever get them to work big, ever. And I can't tell you how many canvases I've wasted just by trying to do this. But finally I'm here. I'm like, I'm kind of touching on what I want. And I'm happy with what I'm doing right now. And it's really hard to get the black line to work big. You know, I can take a ballpoint pen and make one on a matchbook cover, like a quick little sketch of a head or a house or a tree or landscape, and it'll work in this capacity. It'll be quick, immediate, and it'll have some poetry to the line, and it'll be kind of stimulating, exciting, and provocative, and you know. But to get to work big is a whole different story. And one of the main vehicles to getting to work big was making those pens out of that Roman bamboo, that Roman cane. As soon as I started to make the bamboo pen, the Japanese calligraphic pen, you know, usually they're this big and they're for making calligraphy. But when you make one out of a piece of cane this big, that's this big around, you can blow up the size a little bit. And that's kind of what I've been in the process of doing. And that coupled with just doing it for so long and, through trial and error, seeing what works and what doesn't has kind of led me to where I am right now. Next.
Most of your paintings seem to be, well, obviously they're all figurative,
Right.
but yet there seems to be there's abstract elements to them. And just can you talk at all about what drives you to the figure? And and many of them are narrative as opposed to being abstract. And do you think that it's important for a piece to speak like that and to have a story? Or can it just be abstract for abstract's sake, of which you have none in your canon?
There are a lot of abstract artists that I like. Tapia is my favorite. He's a Spanish Catalonian artist. Started in after the World War II, the 50s, and started out figurative and became abstract. And his work is it's fantastic. It's just mind blowing. I mean, he'll have just a big canvas with one X on it, and that's it. And it's beautiful. I would have to say that no, for me, in my own personal work, the figure is very important, and I am a figurative artist. And I get this question a lot. I've given a couple workshops, and just a couple weeks ago, I was in Kansas City and had to address 140 students and faculty who grilled me with the same question. And yeah, I'm a figurative artist, and there's nothing wrong with that. But abstract people, see, I mean, the whole chronology of art in the 20th century has evolved in a very strange way. Matisse and Van Gogh, late last century, especially Matisse, started to break it down into planes. And right before World War II, I mean, Cubism and stuff kind of came into vogue, and then Dadaism and Marcel Duchamp kind of blew it all open with displaying a urinal and signing it. And he ruined art for everybody in my mind, Marcel Duchamp. He was too smart for his own good. But and then sure, it all got broken down. Surrealism in the 30s and 40s was and I should say in the 20s, 30s and 40s was kind of the breaking down of reality. But it was still real. And I have to remind you that this is also coincides with history at the time. Europe was just a tinderbox. Germany had been completely just gutted from World War I. The Armistice Treaty of 1918 pretty much just took away all German rights, money, right to have a military and everything. And as the Nazi Party started to take over in the 20s and 30s, again, people started to get worried, and it must have been a horrible time to be alive, especially if you were in Europe. I mean, just a horrible time. In Spain, I mean, the Civil War in the 30s. And surrealism kind of evolved at the same time. And if you look at most surrealist painters, like Miro and Dali and Picasso in some instances, I think Picasso, he kind of jumped on the bandwagon. He wasn't a creator of it, or to me, he wasn't a real serious surrealist. He was just painting in a mode. He was a master in a completely different way. But Dali especially, I mean, you just saw the collective manic craziness of that time. And in New York, right about the same time, as soon as World War II started, you got the complete breakdown, not of reality. I mean, like I say, Dali was still painting realistic, kind of identifiable things, but they were still all representational objects. But in New York, Pollock, Franz Klein, Gorky, I mean, they broke it down to just nothing but line and color. It wasn't even a representation of anything anymore. It was just painting for painting's sake. And there was no identifiable image. And that kind of corresponds to when, in a way, I forget where I've read this, but, corresponds to where, we were breaking down the atom to make the atom bomb, breaking down the smallest identifiable part of reality, the atom. And the painters were doing the same thing. They broke it down to the smallest identifiable pieces of the painting. It's like, it doesn't even represent anything more. It's just lines and color. And it's just drips and it's just splatter. And then in the 50s, Robert Ryman, where painting's dead. He just has a white canvas on the wall. Okay, so you had all that happen. And now it's the 90s. It's 50 years later. I mean, what do you do? I mean, the chronology is kind of just the history of painting, just dissolved painting. It's just you've watched it be figurative last century and just dissolved into nothingness, and then finally somebody displays a white canvas and painting's dead. It's over with. Am I not going to paint because of that? No, absolutely not. I think there's enough medium ground anywhere and everywhere. There are so many options that are unexplored that they're definitely worth investigating.
I like it. What do you think about the nature of painting and of all art being derivative of what's come before? And is that an inevitability? Is it something to rise beyond, or is it just a fact?
I think that that's a good question too, because I think that all I mean, everybody has a base somewhere. I mean, Picasso had I mean, his academic European base was based in classicism and neoclassicism and portraiture and the landscape, certainly, as were most of the great masters of the 20th century. The only people that really kind of get away from that, and as far as idea and composition, I think can be the abstract expressionists like Franz Klein and Gorky, who broke it down completely. It's like, where was their influence? You know, were they are lines on the floor, lines made by moving a dolly in and out of a warehouse, or interesting lines in the cement, or wear patterns in paint? Are they a legitimate influence? And if you take your influence from that, are you any better than somebody that takes their influence from the Renaissance? I don't know. But I really don't believe that anything comes out of nowhere. And sure, they all fed on each other, the abstract expressionists. And I mean, you could even see the breakdown of that in surrealism, like with Miro. I mean, he started to have some pretty sloppy kind of abstract stuff happen before that. I'm not saying that Miro is in any sense the precursor of abstract expressionism, but there were elements of that in the work previous to it.
Okay, just to bring it back to you, what is it about a piece of yours, when you're finished with a piece, what makes it a success in your eyes versus a failure in your eyes? Failure might be the wrong word.
Okay. No, failure is the right word. I would say this: a successful piece is one that when you're finished, you can sit back and look at for an hour, and you look at it for an hour, and you like it, and it hits you right here and not here. It's something that's, I mean, it's really
This is a quick interjection, sorry, but when you say it, you have to say it hits you in the gut. I'll get out in the head.
Well, that's what I mean. It hits you in the gut. It's not it's not cerebral enough to make you think and try to figure out some kind of, two-dimensional crossword puzzle. It's not a game, but something about just the soul, the presence, the vibration of the entire piece. It hits you in the gut, and you appreciate it because it does that. I mean, you're a magician in a way. I mean, you make something, you illustrate something, and it actually has the power. So when somebody looks at it, it makes them feel different inside. And I think that's a successful piece.
Tell me, is there anything that do you want your audience or people that would look at your piece, do you want them to think into it? Do you want them to detect any narrative? Do you just want to evoke a raw emotion? Ideally, what would be a viewer's reaction to your pieces, especially these big paintings?
I would say that what I would like people to take away from these big paintings, in any of them, I'm speaking of it all as one body of work, and all is basically the same idea. Even though they have different narratives, they have different implications, and they certainly have different kind of ideas about them. But it's just to to question the intent of our creator. The intent, nobody can know the plans of any being or any forces that have actually made us or constructed life. But that's the greatest mystery of all, is why does every being reproduce, with such fervor? I mean, the string, the thread that unites every living organism is the damned ability to reproduce and do it with such fervor and ferocity that's pretty much the driving force of every living organism, is the reproduction further of its own self. And the big question is why? It's not a coincidence. It's like some people tell me, it's like, oh, I don't believe in God, or I don't believe in any kind of governing force. It's like, how can you not? How can you not? When, everything's just furthering itself. For what? There has to be something behind all that. It's not just coincidence. To me, that's just a ridiculous idea. And to me, I would say most of my work is just about pondering that. And it's, just the sometimes the insane and contradictory type of truisms that you see in the world every day, and have had, that have followed us from ancient times. And it's like, why? That's kind of the thrust of my work. And I want people, when they look at it, to get the same feeling I do. It's kind of this, it kind of awes you in a way of like, and not necessarily a good way. I mean, a lot of people describe my work as being kind of grotesque and kind of, uneasy. And part of that is that because human nature and life in general, nature is not all smiley faces and roses. It's like, I'm not to make decoration. I hate decorative art. It's candy and it's stupid. It's mindless. It's not art. Sailboats and stuff. It's craft. It's not real art. And to me, I'm trying to get at what I think is most important for to be a person alive, and that's to ponder things like that. To ponder that is the thing. It's not things like that. That is the thing to think about or to take into consideration.
Well, one of my final questions is let me check the framing here. We're looking good. Final question is, how do you name your pieces? Do you put much importance in that? Do they just come to you? Are they intended to enhance the viewing of the piece? Is it intended to kind of dictate what you're supposed to feel about it, or anything? What's the gig?
See, that's kind of a sore question with me, because when I name a piece, in most of my work, I like to give away as little information as possible. I like the imagery of the piece to be the piece. If you title it, you give people more information in a different sense that's not really in the piece. I think I title my pieces for the most part because so many people ask about it. So many gallerists request it. And oftentimes I do have a tongue-in-cheek title for myself. And that's almost always diversionary. It never really sheds any light on it at all. And for me, titles are tongue-in-cheek. I completely, they're a joke. to me because it's the art that should speak, and you know, you don't need any extra information. Yeah. Sometimes artist statements and titles are important in like some realms of postmodernism where you know, you have an artist that's trying to do some real conceptual bullshit by, you know, putting neon lights on the wall and, you know, talking about redefining geometric space. They need that because the piece wouldn't stand alone. It's like, what am I looking at? A fluorescent light bulb. But oh, there's more. You know, that kind of stuff's important to have a title. But most of my titles are tongue in cheek, and I don't know, I really haven't talked about this at all, but it is. It's always been tongue in cheek titles with me. Poking fun at the work and poking fun at the request for a title. Like, what's this called? I went through a few year period where all my works were untitled. Untitled this, untitled that. And then I would go through a sculpture, you know, some of the ones you saw downstairs, like the girl nursing the Flintstonian baby bird. It's like, what's that called? You can probably guess. Girl with bird. I like them to be as closed and cryptic and as hard to penetrate as possible because it's I very consciously give away or try not to give away a lot of information in them. And when I do titlement, it's usually just kind of a playful little poem around the painting. It doesn't mean anything, really. But it's a poem around the painting. It's, you know, it's like Solomon Grundy's Paradise Garden. You know, you kind of say, well, what does that mean? Well, Solomon Grundy was a character that was in English nursery rhymes in the 1840s, and Paradise Garden refers to the Garden of Eden. This bamboo pen has been three things in its life. It was a flute originally. Then if you see all these dog teeth marks, it quickly became a dog toy. That ruined it as a flute, and then it finally became a pen. Yeah, I started watercoloring in Italy in '95. This is the first one I made. It was with Oliviero Rinaldi, an Italian artist, and he took me through some of the real basics on watercolor use. After that, I just watercolored for a month, maybe even the next 2 months. But it was a very inspiring place to work because I was in the mountains in Italy in August, really old medieval city town. It was just it's big thunderstorms that roll in, and you know, it's just really neat seeing that kind of stuff coming out of the mountains or right down the mountains at you. It was just I don't know, just the quality of the atmosphere and the air and everything was just very inspiring. It's hard to really put your finger on, but I came up with some great images that I still love, like this. It's pretty narrative, but there's not much to grab onto either. Oh yeah. Jot down some ideas background. Okay. Basically, this is all from 90. These here are from 97. I think. I said just playing around with random ideas. It then stuck like this. Again, here's some more of the blue watercolor, some Caramonico after I got some paper that I didn't have to salvage from places. Some of these I still like a lot. Those look a lot different. Yeah, like I said, these are just 4 years earlier. And
Any non-traditional brushes or anything used with those?
No, it's just all pretty traditional brushes. And this is what I mean about getting the paper wet to control the light on the figure. Is just see that little area of light blue in his chest? I mean, that makes all the difference in the world. As far as, the body of the figure and the, just giving it a three-dimensional quality. And all it takes is, you just dry out your brush and just take away a little bit of the ink right there on either side of the leg. And you can develop kind of a nuance to doing it, but that's really hard to do in any kind of detailed, small.
It's a heck of a bleeder on that bird there.
Yeah, this?
Yeah, it's like a halo.
Yeah, see, that's some of the unpredictable kind of stuff that you get. Working all wet like that. Yeah, this little girl figure was pretty much my standard universal figure over there. She just kind of appeared from this series, actually. Just how the brush handled and how I was painting. She just kind of appeared and stayed with me. This was at the same time as it's pretty much those kind of watercolors that we looked at before, the ones with the real atmospheric background and black line over them, but I just decided to boil them down a little bit and take some of the narrative out of them. This is really kind of a painstaking way to work, but come up with some interesting results. And I'd like to go back to this because I only made about 5 or 6 of these. I'd like to play with that a little bit more in the future sometime. These fit into the frame rather nicely. The use of the space I like in this one. And I like, one little thing I do is I blotted this paper with olive oil. That's where I get all these little stains in the background, but it works in this way. This is closer to what I'm doing now in a way. This works for me. This is one of the best of this kind on paper for me. But now I've even, in my painting, I've even boiled this down more. It's like there's no atmospheric landscape in the background. It's all just figure on canvas. That looks like one of the finest bird cage. This one picks, yeah. Similar to mine, the one that I have, but a little grimmer. Yeah, a more grim. This is another personal favorite image. It's just so simple. Yeah, and these were just tremendously fun to make. The St. George sling the dragon. Again, just because you could really go nuts for these diagonal lines of the lance. The dragon serpentinely squirming around. Figure kind of crunched in there, and the leaping horse. I think I probably made about 8 or 10 of these just because they were so much fun. And, granted, when you make that many, one is better than the other. There's one that's just where you kind of finally go a little bit too far, but it still works. But one reason I think it works is the shadow of this construction right here is carried on to this kind of giving this a third dimension, even though it really doesn't have it in the black line very much. It does as far as how the light is manifested in landscape. Because, just a windy day at the beach. You know how that can be.
two different versions of birds. And so these pieces are kind of the seed of what you're doing right now.
Yeah, in a way. And these were, if I say you saw some of these, I showed you these earlier. Like, these evolved out of these. After a while, I got kind of tired of just the formula of masking these off and making this, and then waiting until the watercolor was the proper dryness, then going into it with the black. These are just like kind of everything at once. Even though I did have a very simple subject matter in each one, it was just the one that I was working with. Say these are pretty much closer to what I'm doing now, and part of that being there's no landscape, there's no background, there's no real atmosphere in the background. It's just laid onto the paper. I much prefer this kind of figurative work right now.
How about the canvas? Does the canvas take and bleed watercolor like that paper does?
Yeah.
Does it take much longer? Do you have to wait a long time for the canvas to dry?
No. It's all pretty instant.
Really?
Yeah.
Does it bleed through the canvas and drip like on the other side?
Yeah. I've played with that a bit too.
Huh.
Yeah, this one works.
Mm-hmm.
And this was the kind of watercolor I did before this. Real controlled. I mean, it doesn't look like I've done much with it except make the silhouette of the figure, but in this kind of watercolor where you don't want watermarks, and by watermarks I mean little, I don't believe examples of me.
Well, you can see a brushstroke, that sort of thing.
Yeah. But this is almost becomes like photographic in its way of just contours of color, like a black and white photograph. Like, you just control the light on the figure. Like, this whole thing was made when the paper was completely wet and it just dried to a certain dryness, and then you only have a window of probably 2-3 minutes to do everything, like to take a little bit of the color off her legs to make them appear illuminated, a little bit off the face. And it's kind of rough because you do it, and depending on how much water you have, it bleeds right back in there and fills it in. That's why, to get good watercolors of this kind of quality, this isn't a real good one, but to make watercolors of that method is, it's pretty touchy.
Is this older stuff that you were going through it there?
This? No, this was the first one I made before all these, because I just started out with what I knew, because this was the mode I was in, and I made a lot like this, but this was the mode I was in before all this. I'm Michael Pugh. I paint and I sculpt. This studio is on land that's been in possession of my family for over 150 years. This building we're in is Racine's second lighthouse. It was built in 1866, and now it's pretty much decrepit on the inside and would cost thousands of dollars to fix up. So I'm using it as a studio. Well, I pretty much work whenever I can. Absolutely. Whenever I have any free time, usually nights after work. As soon as I get off work, I eat and then go directly to the studio, unless it's a girlfriend night. And I think it's very important to put in a lot of time in your work if you're an artist. You can't do it if you on a coffee table with notebooks and pencil down a million great ideas, because they'll never be realized. I think that most of my good ideas were made right in the studio when I was working. I think that might be just particular to me, but I think that the best ideas happen when you're actually working on the stuff itself.
That brings me to a couple questions. First of all, Tell me, how long do you typically work in a session? How many hours is it?
Lately, if it's on a weeknight, usually 3, 4 hours. Weekend, if I have the whole day, sometimes as much as 6, 8. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, if I'm really have a project, if I have a sculpture I'm working, I'll work 12 on it. Especially if a lot of sculpture work is busy work, you know. The fun of it's gone in 3 or 4 hours, and the rest of it's just meticulous, busy work.
Describe to me that you said some of your best ideas and some of your best inspiration has happened while you're working. Do you feel that, do you know where your ideas are coming from? Do you have any idea when do the best ideas strike you?
I can never predict that. It's always hit or miss. It's always you're on or you're off. Today I was really on. But yeah, you have off days and on days, and that's for damn sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've been a student of history. I mean, since I can remember my interest in history being at the age of 5 and 6, anything old or cryptic or ancient was magical, and it's somehow it always seemed since we couldn't figure out a lot of the artifacts of past civilizations that they always knew something that we didn't, and I think that's important to my work. Just the history of the human race. I would say that, I mean, it has its roots in that idea. It's just the poetry of being human. That's how I look at my own work. Most people, when you say the word history, they get this idea of names of presidents and dates and high school and college classes of trying to remember this and stuff. But to me, history is the sum total of absolutely everything that's happened until this very second, right here. And that's damn important. I mean, that has all kinds of ideas and truisms and observations in it. I mean, I think in order to be a very aware individual today, you have to be aware of that. You have to be aware of the history of people, social and political history, and religious. But I think that plays a role in my work more than anything else, because a lot of my images come from different cultures, and I really can't pin any one of them. Sure, right now I'm kind of playing around with images of Indians,
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask you about that.
but it really doesn't matter where they come from. I don't like make faux Egyptian work, or I don't make like faux Indian work, or faux Greek, or neoclassical. It's just I think that you really have to tap into your past to really know where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
What about your growing up in Oklahoma? Does that have any bearing on where you're coming from?
Yeah, I would say that has something to do with it. Um, I spent a lot of my summers down there from the time I was born until I was about 12 or 13 years old, and yeah, my grandpa had a ranch outside Talala, Oklahoma, and a big cattle ranch of 1,500 acres, and that was a fabulous playground for a boy to go and run up into the bottomlands and the woods, and to find Indian artifacts, which I did, and you know, kill lizards and snakes and stuff like that. I mean, it was a real elemental kind of great atmosphere to grow up in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that gave me a great appreciation for the Native Americans, and for all primitive peoples. You know,
What do you mean when you say primitive peoples?
primitive. I mean by peoples, I'm talking about humanity all over the globe before the age of the machine, where people made stuff out of sticks, rocks, clay, uh, rawhide, teeth, bone. That age, in that age, I mean, is the majority of human history. I mean, human history started 50,000 years ago, even longer. And just in the last 1,500, 2,000 years have we got out of that. And I think there is something to be said for the collective unconscious of the genetics of your mind and how it's made up. And it's I believe that there's a kind of an encoded blueprint in everybody's subconscious that you can collectively remember generations ago. Not consciously, but it's there if you dig deep enough. I really do believe that, and I've kind of felt it. And that's, I mean, our material culture, 1,500, 2,000 years ago. I mean, that was the end age of that very primitive, very very elemental type of life way that I mean, all humans come from. And I have to say, I really don't know what I'm trying to target or get at by really pursuing that in my work, or really having that as like my main thrust of energy or focus in my work. But it just seems tremendously important to me, especially when technology and I'm not trying to be some anti-tech freak, but especially when technology and machines and pollutants and distilling chemicals to the nth potent degree have seemed to have caused so many problems in the last century. Not even the last 300 years, but in the last century. And I think that's important. I think that's very important to reflect on. That's a good question. I think part of it's just the simplicity of doing that. I mean, it's so elemental and basic. I mean, if you have the bamboo pen in your hand, is an extension of your hand and your brain. Your brain is the the intelligent mechanism that is controlling the tip of this, and it's dipped into black pigment. You draw it across the canvas. I mean, that is so absolutely direct. I mean, the only thing you can get more direct is to remove that and make it with your hand. And I mean, there's so many cultures around the globe have done that in the past. You see handprints in Australia, North America, Aborigines, Native Americans, just the handprint on rock shelters and rock caves. And that, I think that was just kind of a primitive affirmation of here I am. It's like, this is my signature. This is my hand. And when you get too involved with too many electronic tools and tweaking it too much, it really loses something. I'm not saying that kind of work is not valuable, because I believe it is, and I appreciate a lot of it. But for me, I really can't make that kind of work and feel like I'm being true to myself. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, the feeling, my whole thrust of work is just, it is so basic in a way. I like to keep it simple. And if I were to deviate from that, using electronics and stuff, I'm not saying that in the future I couldn't do that somehow, but I really haven't found a method of operations that I would feel good about using. Unless it's dirty, very elemental, ripped apart, kind of aged, washed over, it really doesn't turn me on in a way.
How do you feel?
I think working quickly is a method to get closer to your subconscious. And I don't mean the collective subconscious, because I really believe that you really can't open that up very often. And I really can't say that I have ever believed that I have opened that up, but I know it's there, and I believe that I feel impulses from it. But working quickly causes you to react in a reactionary, very intuitive way, like fire, hot, burn, get away. And it forces you to use those very archaic impulses in yourself to react to that. And that's where I believe it's very valuable in coming up with imagery and compositions that are simple but compelling at the same time. Because in many ways, there's something you could never predict. It's not something you sit in your kitchen, and you're having a beer before you go to bed and you draw out a really nice sketch of what you're going to make tomorrow. I've never done that in my life. it's, I mean, it opens up the reaction, the intuitive, the biting side of reaction. You have to react to it, and especially with this kind of medium, the watercolor, you have to do it quick, otherwise it starts to dry. It starts to get to a consistency where you can't work, and it's not very fresh anymore. So by working like this big on canvas, it's very valuable for getting a very clean slice of very honest, straightforward work. And that's one thing I really love about this work, the watercolor and black line, is its honesty. It's so quick, and it's not painted over, it's not touched up, it's not shaded, it's not airbrushed. It's just there. Bam, it's like you can see it's on raw canvas. There's nothing painted over. I mean, that's one aspect of them that I think is very compelling. The thing that I really think makes these works special to me is I mean, it's just a slice. It's frozen poetry. Boom, it's done. You can't change it. It's done.